Great. So we have a powerful topic, the power of emotions and how emotions and the Wim Hof method are relating with each other. And I'm sure people listening will find many gold nuggets in that because all three of us have been practicing with emotions quite a lot in the last years. But first, I want to share a little bit the story about how we actually started working together, Yoni, or like how it came into being. I was visiting a yoga class of yours, and I was really deep into the Wim Hof method at this time. And in your yoga class, I saw like, wow, okay, this yoga stuff is really, really cool. And it reminds me also of the Wim Hof method because we did very intense things. We used the breath, and there was like a strong energy generated with breath work and physical exercises. We just didn't have the ice bath, but we also had like the power of intention and intensity, our body awareness, and breathing exercises. And so I ask you like, hey man, let's do cooperation. I feel it's so cool. And later, Rachel joined the team. You want to share something about that?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting combination because I met Michael. Actually, I met him, and the first time we met, the connection was through ice bathing. So Michael invited me to his ice bath or freezer in the basement of his house. And I did my first ice bath, and I was immediately hooked onto the method. And I guess my first meeting with Yoni was also through yoga. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. We did breath work together at your place.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the connection formed, and
yeah, we hosted two really amazing Wim Hof and yoga retreats together, and we will also continue to do that. But in that, we also, all of us, we practice a lot about the power of emotions and to get more internal understanding about them, and decided let's also do a retreat about the Wim Hof method and the topic of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. So for me, the journey was really nice in this way because when you showed me the Wim Hof method, Micha, it really complemented what I did with the yogic practices that I had learned so far and that I was practicing. And yeah, I'm really grateful to you that you showed it to me. And also, when we started practicing the emotions practice, which we will talk about today, the conscious feeling of emotions, it really added another layer also to the whole thing because, yeah, I was really missing a good access to my emotions, and I was suffering from that actually, and I couldn't cover it with yoga or the Wim Hof method. And I think it's like a really valuable tool that you can use alongside those methods to like, yeah, deal with your emotions and learn how to deal with them. Yeah, so this is why we want to do this event where we do all these things together and talk about that today.
Yoni, I think you described it really well with the yoga. You can go really also into the body, but also into the spiritual realm. Actually, also the same you can do with the Wim Hof method and use the power of the mind. And also emotions do come up in the retreats. We saw it many times in ourselves, but also in the participants. But there's not a real framework how to deal with the emotions or to really grasp them. So what we are using is like a map, actually by Vivian Dittmar, about the emotions. And it's really nice to understand there is a framework that you can integrate to understand better what's happening on the internal world and how you can facilitate it to use the power of the emotions.
Yeah, that's right. And like me,
sorry?
That's okay. I was coming from yoga, and like I said, coming from there as a yoga teacher, I was really missing this kind of framework that they have for like body awareness and creating mindfulness. The sort of map that they have for that in yoga, we have now found it from Vivian Dittmar for emotions. And yeah, the Wim Hof method links perfectly to it for several reasons that we're going to talk about today. Yeah. you have some nice questions for us, Micha. Do you want to start us up?
Yes, I have many questions. And yeah, let's just go for it. So Rachel, you also spend a lot of time in India practicing yoga there and meditation. And also I feel like you as a person, you just like have a very deep intuition and like also this like female wisdom inside of you. And like in the stereotypes, they say like the guys, they don't have so much emotional wisdom and the women are more connected to that. And so I would be curious how you feel about if there's some changes since you have been practicing more consciously with the emotions, or like what changed or what was already intuitively there. And yeah, how was your journey with that?
Wow. With the emotions, I would say, I mean, I have been dealing, I think we all have emotions happening throughout our whole life, but I wouldn't say I knew how to deal with them very well. And actually, the first framework I had was this framework by Vivian, where I actually had like a space where I could sit and deal with my emotions in a way that I never had before. So through the practice of yoga, I found that I could probably move the emotions through my body. So at the end of a yoga practice, I felt light, which was a nice sensation, but it wasn't that I was actually feeling the emotions. I was just allowing them to like move through my body in a way. And through using the space holding by Vivian Dittmar, it was for me the first time that I could actually like sit with an emotion, feel an emotion, and like have another person hold space and therefore have a bigger container to feel the emotion. And what's interesting is with the combination of the Wim Hof method, I found that the more that I was practicing with the breathing and with ice bathing, the more resilience I was able to build. And therefore, I had a bigger capacity to actually hold or feel emotions. And so through the process of all of these together, I found that, yeah, I'm like touching on topics from my past and also my present, which otherwise I would have just like stored away, but I have a bigger capacity to be able to hold them now.
I really love what you said about that, because also I feel like going into the ice bath, it seems like such a rough practice, but that you can also use it, that you have this strength in order to deal with something very soft. And with, or like the emotions, like it's, people say like it's the softer stuff, but actually they can be really intense, and to get in better contact with them, to use the strength from the Wim Hof method to do that. And also to understand that it's helpful if another person is supporting you in this process.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yoni, you have also been practicing with the emotions for some years now. I would be curious which personal changes you could observe in your everyday life.
Yeah. Let me just think for a second. In my everyday life, what really changed is the way I can engage with my emotions, like the way I can allow them to be there, and not scare away from them. Like before I started practicing the space holding, where we learn how to feel our emotions consciously. Before I started practicing this, I was much more scared of my emotions, and when they came up in situations, I recognized them as something that is not helpful in the situation, that I don't want there. For example, in a situation with my friends, I was getting insecure, and when this insecurity was coming up for me, I was shying away from it and trying to push it away, or trying to cover it up with some other feelings that I tried to generate, really to like synthesize. Like I tried to make different feelings that the feelings that I had. And like with the practice of space holding, where you go regularly into feeling difficult emotions, I really feel that the ability to be with difficult emotions when they come up has increased a lot. And that is so helpful, because these emotions, they are actually helpful in the situation when you can allow them to be there, and you will be more relaxed also when you can allow them to be there. So you have a double gain in the situation. You can use the feeling for because it arises for a reason, right? The feeling is not just there to annoy you. The feeling is there to connect you to the situation. And then you can actually engage with that feeling and take the power of that feeling and use it in the situation. Yes. So like when you get angry in a situation, maybe it's helpful in that situation. You can use that anger to correct the situation in the way that you want it different. So you can use that anger. But if you push the anger away, you cannot change the situation because you don't use that power of that feeling that arises. So just as one example. And that's why like having the ability and cultivating this ability where you can use your emotions, feel your emotions, and then use these emotions is so valuable. And it relaxes you more towards these emotions because they don't seem so scary anymore. It's not like a switch, but it's a practice, and it sets off a process that continues throughout your practice, right? That's how I experience it.
100%. What came up while you were speaking also was the quote of Wim Hof, who says sometimes, if you don't go to the cold will come to you.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly.
if you don't go to take the cold showers, you will get actually sick. But if you consciously confront the discomfort, actually you get stronger through that. And I feel like with these overwhelming emotions, it's the same thing. And it's very helpful then to have someone holding the space so that you actually have the capacity to feel through it. And I also would like to introduce the separation between emotions and feelings that Vivian Dittmar uses. Because you said, actually, the feelings are helpful, or some feelings are helpful, but also emotions can destroy complete relationships and work environments, and can really destroy your life if you're like controlled by them, right?
Yeah, that's right.
There's these useful feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So would you like to clarify a little bit like what the difference is?
Yeah. So with the feelings, it's just like terminology. We want to be clear in what we talk about, right? So feelings, the word feelings we use for feelings that we have in the situation that can relate us to that situation. They arise because we are in that situation, like with the anger, right? There's a situation that I don't like. Something in the situation is different than I would like it to be. So anger comes up, and it will help me to connect to the situation and correct it. Or if there in the situation something occurs that is something I don't like, but I cannot change it, sadness can come up, and it can help me to accept what I cannot change.
Yeah.
So in this sense, all the feelings that we have, like fear, anger, sadness, happiness, shame, these feelings, they all have a function, and they serve a purpose in the moment.
Let's maybe run through them. You already mentioned like the function of anger is to change what you don't like, but you have the power to change it. Sadness, it's like to let go of what you cannot change and accept it.
That's right. So fear has the power to let you be able to face the unknown. So it carries you into the unknown, allowing you to be creative in a situation that you don't know. That's the power of fear. Then we have happiness, which has the power to appreciate what is happening, just to really value what is going on right now. And then we have shame, and shame allows us to self-reflect and to self-correct and to acknowledge what is maybe different about ourselves than we would like it. And shame is special in that way because through shame, we can use all the other feelings on ourselves. So if there's something about ourselves that we don't like, we can use the anger force to change that, to have the energy to change something about ourselves, or to use the sadness force to accept something about ourselves that we cannot change, for example, or to appreciate ourselves. So, yeah, all these feelings have a certain purpose. And if we are not connected to that purpose, it can also be the case that we experience these feelings in a distorted way, and then we experience a shadow side of these feelings. So it's it unfolds quite a system where we have like a useful side of these feelings and a shadow side of these feelings. And in the retreat, we will cover all of that system and really go through it so that everybody can understand like what is the power of the feeling, but what is also, how can it be in your way when it's misunderstood what you're feeling, and when you're pushing it away, and thus then you're getting into the shadow of the feeling. For example, the shadow of anger would be destruction, right? If anger is misunderstood, people start to yell and destroy things or relationships, stuff like that. Every feeling also has a shadow. It's our task to be conscious about the feelings so we don't slide into the unhelpful side of those feelings.
What is kind of sad, or maybe I should be more angry because maybe we can change something about it. I don't know. People experience a lot of the shadow expressions of the feelings, like the destruction of the anger, or like to get like freeze up because of the fear, or the sadness makes you like depressed. I cannot change anything. It's like these extreme expressions of the shadow.
Mm-hmm.
If you then suppress all the emotions, you also don't have the strength that you just mentioned.
Yes.
And then you cut yourself off of very important energies that can support you in different situations.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
I would also like to go a little bit into the topic of the emotions, like when you get triggered. We haven't covered that so much yet. And so there's a distinction between the feelings and the shadow feelings we just spoke about. And then there's the emotions that are coming from the past and sometimes hijack our brain, our thinking, and our behavior. And afterwards, we feel like, oh man, this wasn't actually like I want to behave, but somehow I was like, someone has a remote control over me, right?
Exactly.
Would you like to speak a little bit about this kind of, about the emotions and being triggered, what that means?
Sure. Yeah, the triggered state. No one likes the triggered state, but it happens to all of us. It's it's a very normal process. And someone once explained it, I think it was Michael, that like if you're in school, for example, and a teacher is yelling at you, like you're doing this wrong. And as a kid, you cannot really stand up for yourself or defend yourself. Even though maybe at that point you can be like, hey man, this is too much, you can't. And so you kind of like shrink and hold in the anger that actually should be expressed. And these emotions that get stuck in the body, for example, when you want to cry, also, crying is actually a movement, like you're moving your body. And when you cannot cry because of shame or because like your friends are around and they're going to laugh at you, you hold it down, you suppress it, the emotions get stuck. And in a trigger response, there's a situation which is bringing up this stuck emotion. So for example, you're talking to your partner and your partner says something and you feel really like, whoa, super triggered. And it's over actually what the situation calls for. It's probably an emotion that's from the past, a stuck emotion. And then you enter the triggered state, which is not the state that could actually be normalized in the situation. And in that moment, it's really good to go to that feeling, have someone hold space for you that isn't the person who triggered you, where you could like sit with this emotion and let the movement complete itself, because it's really just wanting to be felt. And the further we push it down, the less it's felt, the more these triggers kind of come up.
Have you an example of recently where you were triggered?
Yes.
Want to share it?
Wow. I was recently at a retreat, and there was a person in the retreat, a really, really nice person, but I felt triggered around this person. And I was trying to understand where this trigger was coming from, because I recognized, okay, I'm feeling there's something inside of me that's off. This person's actually not doing anything wrong, but I have a strong feeling of anger or frustration. And I fell through it, and I actually realized that it was a trigger from my past, from my family, And this person was bringing it up in me because they reminded me of someone in my family, and the trigger just hadn't been felt through. It was like a very old, stuck emotion as being a kid in my family system. And yeah, it was like extremely apparent because we were in a group setting. This person was doing nothing wrong, and I was sitting there like unable to talk, really frustrated. But it was such a nice point for me to be reminded to actually feel through the feeling and actually finish the movement from my childhood. So
yeah, so I liked how you described how to identify, am I triggered or is it just a normal emotion? Because you said a normal feeling, because you said like, if the intensity is so strong that it's actually much stronger as the situation requires, it's a hint like, hey, maybe this is like some old stuff. And then to release the steam out of the body or like finish the movement means that maybe next time the same situation will appear and I will not be angry at all, which is really, really funny.
yeah. As we're speaking, I'm also realizing we're talking about the space holding, but actually maybe we could explain a little bit of what it looks like so that people can understand what this actually means.
Yeah, I think this is a good idea. So maybe to wrap this up, we talked about feelings, how we have feelings that serve a purpose in the situation, and we have emotions that are old feelings that we could not feel and that have got stuck in our system for that reason. So now when we talk about the space holding, we are only dealing with emotions. So this is about dealing with old feelings that we are carrying around and that cause problems in the present because they are actually from the past and they don't belong in the present. So yeah, just to give it that context, yeah, let's dive into it. How does the space holding work? I mean, there's two people on your side of the screen, so maybe you can demonstrate it.
Yeah.
Okay, we could do that. All right. Just to mention a little bit more about it, to get a feeling why we would do that, I would like to introduce the image of a father or a mother, and then imagine the child is exploring the world, and then the child is experiencing something that is a little bit overwhelming, like a cat jumping into their face, right? And then the kid has such strong emotions that it feels like I cannot handle this on myself. I run to my dad or to my mom and start, for example, crying. And the mom provides a safe space to let that run through the system, right? And if this process happens, there's nothing stuck in us. But if there's nobody there to give us this safe space, or it's like when it happens in school and we feel ashamed and not safe, then it gets blocked. And to finish the movement, even if we're grown-up people, it's very, very helpful to have someone with providing us a safe container, and then the emotional capacity is increased through the space the other person is providing. Mm-hmm. So the way to do it is, if you feel like, okay, this person is really annoying me, or like I'm really, really triggered, to go to another person and, for example, Rachel, can you hold space for me for a second?
Of course.
Right? What we then do is like we agree on a certain time, like 5 minutes each, for example, and it always goes in both ways. So she's holding space for me first, and then I hold space for her, so that we are on eye level. It's not like someone is the therapist and the other is like the patient or something like this.
Yeah, it's mutual.
It's a mutual practice that everybody can share. We also agree that we don't speak about what comes up inside the session, because it should be resolved and then can be in the, yeah, we don't need to warm it up again afterwards. She doesn't tell other people, but she also doesn't speak with me about it again. We just let it out and then it's gone. Yeah, so we have clear roles, who is holding space, we have a clear time, and we agree that we don't speak about it later. And then, yeah, Rachel, would you like to explain like about the process itself?
Sure. So I'm now the person holding space, and Michael is the one who will be feeling. So personally, what I like to do as the person that's holding space is just really ground myself into the ground and feel my body. And the idea for me is I'm not really doing anything. I'm just providing a space for the other person to feel themselves. And a nice way to do it is to imagine that you feel your heart and you create an imaginary bubble around you. Maybe you can think of someone that you really love, or like a really good feeling, and fill that space with that really nice feeling. And the idea is then to grow the bubble not only around yourself, but around the person that you're sitting with as well, so that they feel safe in that space. And then I don't do anything else but just be there, observe, listen, and provide the space for the person.
And it's a really nice exercise that we also practice on the retreat, to just do that. And then as the other person to really feel, oh, there's someone giving me his or her attention. And it's incredible that this is really, you can really feel that. All the participants always tell us like, wow, I felt that. I felt that in my body. Someone's paying attention to me. Our nervous systems are communicating with each other, right? And if this space is there, I just try to relax my body and maybe remember the situation that triggered me. Maybe I even speak about it, but the goal is not to speak about it, but to feel what was stuck there. All right? Okay.
So I would actually also, just to say this, let the person know that the space is opening. It's also important that there's a framework in the space. So I would tell Michael, the space is now opening. And after a certain time period, I would also say the space is now closing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the space is opening.
Okay. Thank you. Holding space.
Yeah. So
I start feeling my body. And I try to find spots in my body that are a little bit more tense than other spots, where there's a little bit more tension. And then I allow that just to be there and to maybe even grow into the rest of my body. What happened was that I was feeling that and allowing it also to move my body. Like Vivian said, Detmar says, these emotions, these old stuck feelings, the only thing that they want from us is to be felt, right? So we allow them to move through us. We don't judge them, but also we don't force them to come up or like try to manipulate them in any way. We just let them flow through us. That's the whole practice. And over time, you will actually realize in everyday life more peace, and also that you will be less triggered. But also here, it's important to understand the goal is not to erase all, to get it out of the system, everything, but to understand it's more like a subtle process of more and more internal connection and awareness.
Yeah, that's right. That's really nice. Thanks for demonstrating this. It's nice to watch this on the screen.
I'll switch roles and then I would hold space for her, but we don't do the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a good example of how it's done. So maybe now everybody can imagine like how it works. You have to try it for yourself, of course, in order to really understand it. And yeah, it's nice to have also good instructions on what are the pitfalls. Like there's always some questions in the beginning. But yeah, it's quite easy and everybody can do it. Right. And you get started really quickly. So this is what we do to learn how to deal better with emotions, right? And like with old feelings. How does it now relate to the Wim Hof method actually?
Yeah, great question. I have something that immediately comes to my mind. The like first thing that Rachel already said, the capacity in the ice bath to be with the intensity without judging it and to let go. This is what we need exactly when we try to process these old emotions, right? Not to get in a loop in the head or to do anything with them, but to trust the body that it has the internal wisdom to deal with it. So I would say this is the first thing. The second thing I would say is the ice bathing and also the breathing exercises, they lower the inflammation. And like when you are triggered, you will feel there's more judgment in your brain. There's more tension in the body. And I'm convinced that this brings up the inflammation in the body because like it's constant stress when you are in this triggered state. It is really a high energy situation. And to relieve that, I personally find the breathing exercises and also the ice bathing amazing to bring down that internal constant stress, right? But also, I feel like it's not enough to bring it down, but also to go to the root of the stress. And the root are oftentimes this unprocessed, stuck feelings. So we can do both things. We can soothe a little bit the stress that comes up through them, but in the end, we really want to resolve them by feeling them through. And then this inflammation won't come up anymore at all. What are your thoughts about it, Yoni? I'm sure you thought about it too.
Yeah, I think you explained it very nicely. Definitely, like when you're in a state of like being triggered and emotions come up, it's a stressful situation, and stress does trigger inflammation. It's physically not healthy, and it's mentally not healthy to be in a stressful state. And if you experience it often, it can really be a very helpful tool. And the Wim Hof method is to go into the ice, and this is a challenge, right? So we practice also in the Wim Hof method to go into a challenge and to feel your emotions, your difficult emotions from the past. It is also a challenge that you have to say yes to and to go into. So this is, I think, one thing that we really practice, to like go into a challenge. And then we have, then we are in the ice, and then we practice to be in the challenge, right? And we learn how to just be in the challenging situation. And this is the same like with the emotions. The difficult emotions, they come up, and then we learn to be in the situation and to feel them and not to escape them. Like when we are in the ice, we're not jumping out immediately again, but we stay in there long enough to get the benefit, right? And then we learn how to deal with it by being in there. We find our way how to deal with the cold, or how to deal with the emotion by opening up to it and looking at it closely and seeing what happens inside of us when we are actually not running away from it. And from this, we can learn. And then it gives us more trust, I think, to like do this over and over again, because we see how it's beneficial to us, right? Because like we went into the challenge and we stayed with the challenge, and then it was actually helpful for us to do that. And then our brain, it learns that this was a good thing to do, and the next time it will be easier, or we will just understand that it makes sense to do it again and then do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or to turn around this impulse from I'm running away from the ice, I'm running away from my emotions, I'm running away from life, and maybe also for my dreams, because they are challenging. Instead, turning it around and practicing, I'm going there, I'm looking at it, I grow from that.
Exactly.
The mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very good way of putting it too, also. Yeah, to just, when there's something that you're constantly avoiding, but that's a problem for you, then you really shift the approach to that, right? You start seeing problems as a potential for you to grow. Like, oh, there's a problem. What can I learn from this when I explore this problem, basically? It's maybe not the most intuitive approach, but when you train yourself to see problems like this, it gives you a whole nother approach to life and life challenges, I guess.
Yeah, I would also like to add something. It's not always about feeling through the emotions, right? For example, when I'm really triggered, I don't directly say like, okay, now I feel it through, because that would mean also acting out maybe, right? I do that in a safe container. And to be in a situation, for example, in the relationship, of course, there's triggers, or in the relationship with family, right? And then to realize, okay, I'm triggered right now. And it's like, okay, the ice bath is there. I try to control my breathing. I stay calm. I don't freak out. And I try to regulate that state until I find someone I can do the space holding session with. So something that pops up.
You say that. But I think the point that I would take away from that is just like also why the the method, the Wim Hof method, is so awesome in transferring into real life, because like what you're saying, when you're in the ice bath, you learn to regulate the nervous system and you learn to relax into the discomfort. And yeah, it happens so often that in life there are uncomfortable situations that bring up a feeling or maybe a stuck emotion. And like you're saying, maybe you cannot practice right away the space holding, but the value of practicing the method is so that when you're in that situation, you can relax in it and find another way to approach the situation that maybe works better than what you used to do.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm looking so much forward to working with you guys again on the next retreat. I always feel like also in the group energy, we give all this information, of course, and with much more details also. But I feel also when there's like more people, like 10 people, working on this together, there's like an energy field created, and the wisdom of each person with the experience and life experience they have, everybody brings that in, and together we learn so much from each other that is not possible just one-on-one. In the group, there's this dynamic, and we focus together on this topic where a lot of learning is happening.
Yeah, and on a more like biological level, just to add to that, it's also the nervous systems working together. And when the nervous systems are together, they co-regulate. And so there's a really special relaxation that can happen when you're around a lot of people and the nervous systems regulate in that way.
Right. So the retreat Feeling is Understanding is end of November, beginning of December. The exact dates, Yoni, do you have them? 30th, November 30th to December 4th in Poland. And you can find it iceretreats.com. And yeah, if you would like to explore with the three of us more the Wim Hof method in combination with the territory of the emotions. Yoni, do you have wise last words to say?
Just if you have any questions, just feel free to ask us. There's lots of information that we covered right now. And if you think this retreat might be for you, this event might be helpful for you, but you're not sure, just let us know. Or if there's any organizational issues that you are unsure about, you can always contact us. Go to poweratmung.de, it's Micha's website. There you will find his contact. And we would really love you to join us if you're into these topics. And see you in Poland.
See you in Poland.
Peace out!